Have you ever wondered why, in the aftermath of profound personal growth, a curious stillness often descends, wrapping itself around you like a cloak woven from silence? It's a solitude that isn't born of loneliness, but rather from a quiet, internal shift. This is the solitude that comes after awakening, a phenomenon many encounter on their arduous journey towards self-discovery and healing. It's the unexpected byproduct of shedding old skins, challenging ingrained narratives, and confronting the shadows within. The world, once a cacophony of external demands and expectations, begins to hum with a different frequency. And you, the awakened soul, find yourself attuned to a new, more solitary rhythm. Consider Alara, a woman whose life had, for decades, been meticulously constructed around the needs and perceptions of others. From her earliest memories, she had been the quintessential pleaser, a chameleon adapting to every social landscape. Her days were a tapestry woven with threads of external validation. A kind word from her demanding mother, an approving nod from her emotionally distant father, the fleeting admiration of a carousel of partners, each reflecting a different facet of her desperate longing to be seen, to be enough. This relentless pursuit of acceptance had left her depleted, a hollow echo of a woman who had forgotten her own voice. The pain of this perpetual self-abandonment, though often masked by a veneer of cheerful resilience, throbbed beneath the surface, a dull ache that intensified with each unfulfilled promise she made to herself. She yearned for connection, yet the connections she forged were always transactional, built on a foundation of what she could offer, rather than who she truly was. The emotional landscape of her relationships was a barren wasteland, mirroring the desert within her own soul. One particularly poignant evening, after another exhausting performance as the perfect girlfriend, enduring condescending remarks and thinly veiled criticisms, Alara found herself staring at her reflection. The woman gazing back was a stranger, her eyes holding a deep weariness that went beyond physical exhaustion. It was a weariness of the spirit, a soul sickness that had been festering for years. A phrase, once heard in a fleeting moment of self-help podcast listening, echoed in her mind. The greatest tragedy is not to die, but to live without ever truly becoming yourself. The words struck her with the force of a physical blow, igniting a spark of rebellion within her. Could it be that her entire existence was a performance, an elaborate charade to appease an audience that cared little for the real Alara? This realization, raw and unflinching, was her first glimpse into the shadowy recesses of her own psyche, a nascent understanding of the self she had so diligently suppressed. She began to withdraw, not from a place of fear or avoidance, but from a burgeoning need to disentangle herself from the external narratives that had defined her. Friendships that once seemed vibrant now felt draining, their conversations orbiting superficial concerns and endless cycles of gossip. Family gatherings, once a source of anxiety, became almost unbearable, the familiar patterns of manipulation and passive aggression now starkly visible. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing the intricate dance of ego projection that permeated her world. She saw how others often projected their own insecurities and unfulfilled desires onto her, and how, in turn, she had absorbed these projections, believing them to be her own truth. This initial phase of awakening was a disorienting freefall, a stripping away of familiar comforts and identities. She felt exposed, vulnerable, and utterly alone. Yet there was a strange, undeniable sense of liberation. It was the solitude of the desert after a long, arduous trek, a vast emptiness that held the promise of new beginnings. Alara started to meticulously dismantle the false self she had so painstakingly constructed. She began setting boundaries, tentative at first, then with increasing resolve. The initial reactions from those around her were predictable. Confusion, resentment, even anger. "You've changed," they would accuse, their voices laced with disappointment. "You're not the same Alara we knew." And they were right. She wasn't. The Alara they knew was a reflection of their own needs, a pliable figure molded to their expectations. This new Alara, still in her embryonic stages, was inconvenient, unsettling. She learned to say no without guilt, to prioritize her own well-being over the comfort of others. The discomfort of these initial confrontations was immense, a burning crucible in which her nascent self was forged. Each no to an external demand was a yes to her authentic self, a tiny victory in the war against self-abandonment. Her journey into the depths of her own psyche led her to the profound insights of Carl Jung. She devoured texts on archetypes, shadow work, and the process of individuation. The concept of the shadow, the repressed aspects of the self, resonated deeply with her. She recognized the anger she had long suppressed, the assertiveness she had deemed unfeminine, the selfish desires she had denied. Instead of pushing these aspects away, she began to integrate them, understanding that true wholeness required embracing both the light and the dark within. The more she confronted her own shadow, the less power it held over her. She began to see that her compulsion to please stemmed from a deeply rooted fear of abandonment, an echo of unmet needs from her childhood. This wasn't about blaming others, but about understanding the intricate web of cause and effect that had shaped her personality. She also delved into the teachings of the Stoics, finding solace in their emphasis on controlling one's reactions and focusing on what is within one's power. The idea that external events hold no inherent power over us, only our interpretation of them, was a revelation. It offered a framework for navigating the emotional turbulence that accompanied her transformation. As Alara embraced her solitude, it transformed from a source of fear into a wellspring of strength. She rediscovered long-forgotten passions: painting, writing, exploring nature. These solitary pursuits became her anchors, grounding her in her own being. She no longer sought external validation for her worth. Her intrinsic value became self-evident. The profound peace she found in her own company was a testament to the power of inner work. She recognized that the true meaning of independence wasn't about being alone, but about being whole within oneself, regardless of external circumstances. The paradox was striking. In embracing her solitude, she became more authentically connected to herself, and ironically, more capable of genuine connection with others, should those opportunities arise. Her journey was a testament to the fact that profound healing often begins in the quiet chambers of self-reflection, where the noise of the world recedes and the whispers of the soul can finally be heard. Alara's narrative mirrors the journey of an individual moving from the persona, the mask presented to the world, towards the realization of the self. Her initial state embodies the archetype of the caregiver or martyr, driven by a deep-seated need for approval and an underdeveloped sense of self-worth. This behavior, often rooted in early attachment experiences, led to a pervasive pattern of self-sacrifice and an inability to assert personal boundaries. Her transformation, however, marks a powerful shift toward the individualized self, a concept central to Jungian psychology. This process of individuation, the psychological journey of integrating the conscious and unconscious, is never without its periods of profound isolation. You, too, may find yourself navigating this liminal space after an emotional awakening. It is in this quietude that the true work of integration occurs, where the fragmented aspects of your being begin to coalesce. Embrace this solitude, for it is not a punishment, but a sacred space for your rebirth. Use this time to cultivate radical self-compassion. Understand that the discomfort you feel is simply the shedding of old skins, a necessary purification before you step into your authentic power. Ask yourself, what parts of myself have I abandoned in the pursuit of external validation? What fears keep me from embracing my own quiet strength? The answers lie not in the noise of the world, but in the profound silence of your own soul. The solitude that comes after awakening isn't merely about the absence of others. It's also a profound confrontation with the second aspect of this transformative journey, the shedding of old identities and the painful, yet liberating, recognition of who you are not. It's the uncomfortable truth that surfaces when the applause dies down and the stage lights dim, revealing the authentic self that has been patiently waiting beneath layers of curated personas. This phase often brings a stark awareness of the societal conditioning that shaped our understanding of love, success, and happiness, and the courage required to dismantle those ingrained blueprints. Consider the insightful words of Carl Rogers, a pioneer in humanistic psychology, who emphasized the concept of the real self versus the ideal self. Rogers posited that much of our psychological distress stems from the discrepancy between who we genuinely are, the real self, and who we believe we should be, the ideal self, often shaped by societal expectations, parental conditioning, and the relentless pursuit of external validation. The curious paradox, Rogers famously stated, is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. This isn't a call to complacency, but a profound invitation to radical self-acceptance, the very bedrock upon which authentic transformation is built. Alara's journey into this second layer of solitude was precisely this: a deep dive into the chasm between her ideal self, the effortlessly charming, universally liked, perpetually sacrificing woman, and her emerging real self, a woman with boundaries, complex emotions, and a burgeoning sense of her own intrinsic worth. For years, her ideal self was a meticulously crafted construct, a shimmering facade designed to elicit approval and avoid perceived rejection. Every interaction was filtered through the lens of what she should be doing, what she should be saying, how she should be feeling. This constant performance was exhausting, a draining charade that left her feeling perpetually disconnected from her own internal compass. The internal debate Alara faced was a microcosm of this Rogerian conflict. Her ideal self screamed for her to maintain the peace, to smooth over disagreements, to prioritize others' comfort above her own. It whispered insidious doubts. If you set boundaries, they will leave you. If you show your true feelings, you will be rejected. If you stop performing, you will be unlovable. This was the pervasive influence of her upbringing, where emotional expression was often met with disapproval, and self-sacrifice was lauded as the highest virtue. She recalled countless instances where her innate desires were subtly, or sometimes not so subtly, dismissed. A fleeting ambition to pursue art in her youth was met with, "That's lovely, dear, but wouldn't something more practical be better?" Her natural inclination towards quiet introspection was seen as being too sensitive. These early experiences became the bedrock for her ideal self, teaching her that safety lay in conformity, and love was conditional upon her ability to fulfill others' expectations. However, the real self, emboldened by her initial steps into self-awareness, began to whisper back. It spoke of liberation, of authenticity, of the quiet strength found in genuine self-acceptance. This internal dialogue was not gentle. It was often a ferocious battleground. One evening, a particularly manipulative friend, sensing Alara's newfound assertiveness, launched into a tirade of guilt-tripping and emotional blackmail. The ideal self screamed at Alara to apologize, to placate, to retreat. But a deeper, stronger voice, the voice of her emerging real self, stood firm. "I understand you're upset," Alara calmly stated, her voice surprisingly steady, "but I need to prioritize my own well-being. This conversation is not productive for me right now." The friend's stunned silence was a testament to the power of this authenticity. It wasn't about winning an argument. It was about honoring her own truth. This profound internal shift was also deeply intertwined with her understanding of trauma psychology and modern self-worth. Alara began to recognize that her relentless people-pleasing was a deeply ingrained coping mechanism, a response to earlier relational wounds where her needs were consistently overlooked. The fear of abandonment, a primal human dread, had propelled her into a desperate dance of accommodation. As she delved deeper, she realized that true self-worth wasn't something to be earned through external achievements or the approval of others. It was an inherent quality, an undeniable birthright. This realization was a seismic shift, dismantling the very foundation of her past anxieties. The process of deconstructing her ideal self was akin to a sculptor chipping away at excess stone to reveal the true form beneath. It was messy, often painful, and required immense courage. She felt the grief of letting go of the familiar, even if the familiar had been deeply unfulfilling. She mourned the loss of relationships that couldn't withstand her authenticity, and she wrestled with the discomfort of revealing her vulnerabilities. Yet, with each layer shed, she felt lighter, more expansive, more truly herself. This wasn't a sudden epiphany, but a gradual, deliberate process of choosing self-alignment over external validation, even when it meant standing alone. The solitude here was a crucible, burning away the dross of illusion and refining the gold of her true identity. Alara's journey exemplifies the profound struggle between the persona and the emerging self, as described by Jung. Her relentless pursuit of external validation transformed her into an archetype of the pleaser or perfectionist, driven by a deep fear of rejection and an underdeveloped anima/animus integration, where the softer, more relational aspects of her psyche were overly expressed to the detriment of her assertive, authentic self. This painful stripping away of the ideal self is a necessary component of individuation, forcing you to confront the ingrained patterns that kept you from your true power. It is in this profound solitude that the echo chambers of societal expectation finally fall silent, allowing your authentic voice to emerge. You are being called to examine the narratives you have adopted as your own, to question who you truly are without the accolades or criticisms of others. This is the sacred space where the work of reclaiming your innate self-worth truly begins. Ask yourself, what illusions about myself am I still clinging to? What parts of my identity have I built to appease others? And how can I gently, yet firmly, dismantle them? The answers will lead you closer to the profound freedom of your authentic self. The solitude that comes after awakening culminates in a profound sense of self-possession, a peaceful internal rebirth that signifies the third and most empowering aspect of this journey. It is the tranquil aftermath of the internal battles fought, the illusions shattered, and the authentic self embraced. This isn't a passive state of being alone, but an active, conscious choice to reside in one's own intrinsic value, radiating a quiet strength that no external validation can diminish. It is the realization that true power lies not in controlling the external world, but in mastering the inner one. Consider the timeless wisdom embedded in the philosophy of Stoicism, particularly as espoused by figures like Marcus Aurelius, who famously penned, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. This isn't a call to emotional detachment, but a profound invitation to distinguish between what is within our control and what is not. The Stoic ideal of inner citadel, a fortress of character unassailable by external misfortune, resonates deeply with the final stage of awakening. It speaks to a self-sufficiency of spirit, a deep-seated tranquility that arises from aligning one's internal landscape with universal wisdom, regardless of the chaos brewing outside. This final solitude is not about being isolated, but about being insulated by an unshakable inner peace. Alara, having navigated the turbulent waters of self-discovery and the painful shedding of her old identity, found herself settling into this profound inner peace. The initial disorienting silence of her awakening had transformed into a rich, resonant quietude. She no longer felt the incessant tug of external expectations, the desperate need for approval that had once dictated her every move. Her days, once a frantic scramble to please, were now filled with deliberate choices, each aligned with her newly discovered values. She cultivated activities that nourished her soul, long walks in nature, the quiet joy of reading, the meditative act of tending to her small garden. These weren't escapes, but rather intentional engagements with her own being, moments of profound connection with the rhythm of her authentic self. The subtle shifts in her external world were remarkable. Where once she might have cowered under criticism, she now met it with a calm discernment, separating constructive feedback from mere projection. Relationships that were once characterized by imbalance either recalibrated or gently faded, making space for connections built on mutual respect and genuine understanding. This wasn't a deliberate severing, but a natural entropy of misaligned energies. The people who remained in her life were those who appreciated her true self, not the carefully constructed persona she once presented. She understood, with a profound clarity, that allowing misaligned relationships to persist was a betrayal of her newly found self-worth. A powerful shift occurred in Alara's approach to her emotions. Influenced by insights from healing psychology, she began to view her feelings not as enemies to be suppressed, but as messengers. Anger, once deemed unfeminine and quickly stifled, was now acknowledged as a signal that a boundary had been crossed. Sadness, no longer a weakness to be hidden, became an indication of loss that needed to be processed with compassion. This radical acceptance of her emotional spectrum was liberating. She learned to sit with discomfort without immediately seeking distraction or external fixes. This emotional literacy, this ability to be present with her internal experience, was a hallmark of her integrated self. She had truly become her own gentle yet firm guide. Her internal monologue, once a relentless stream of self-criticism and doubt, had softened into a more compassionate, encouraging voice. This was the quiet triumph of self-worth, a knowing, deep within, that she was inherently valuable, regardless of external circumstances or achievements. This wasn't arrogance, but a simple, profound truth. She recognized that the true power of this awakening lay not in grand pronouncements or dramatic transformations visible to the world, but in the subtle, profound internal shift, the quiet strength of knowing herself, accepting herself, and trusting herself. It was the ultimate act of self-love, a commitment to her own flourishing. Alara's journey culminates in the archetype of the sage or the sovereign, embodying a profound integration of her psyche. Having navigated the labyrinth of her shadow and shed the deceptive layers of her persona, she now stands rooted in her authentic self. This is the essence of individuation, where the disparate parts of the psyche coalesce into a harmonious whole. Her newfound peace is not born of avoidance, but from the courageous process of confronting past traumas and reparenting her inner child, demonstrating the profound impact of trauma psychology on adult well-being. This final solitude is not a state of being alone, but a state of being whole within oneself. It is the ultimate freedom, the quiet knowing that your worth is intrinsic, not externally derived. You, too, are capable of cultivating this inner sanctuary, this unshakable peace. Begin by embracing small acts of self-care that truly nourish your soul, whether it's a mindful walk in nature, dedicated time for creative expression, or simply moments of quiet contemplation. Challenge the negative thoughts that echo old narratives of unworthiness. Replace them with empowering affirmations that resonate with your emerging truth. This internal transformation is your greatest power, an alchemy that transmutes pain into purpose and solitude into profound self-possession. It's in this powerful stillness that your authentic life truly begins. If you find it interesting or see yourself in the story, please leave a like, subscribe and comment to help our channel feel from you. And if you know someone who needs this video, please send them this video as a necessary share. Thanks for watching. The end.